And I chose to actually go to Hawaii. That was one of the destinations. I was like, yeah, I'll go to Hawaii.
I'm sorry.
And she got, no, it's okay. Do you want me to stop? My mom was a crazy hippie. That's the best way I can explain her. She's not alive anymore, but I'm starting to learn that maybe there was undiagnosed schizophrenia, some kind of mental illness that I just still don't know what it was, but she was an amazing person, very dynamic, that type of person where they walk into the room and everyone like looks at her and she can just hold court. Um, and she was a drug user and from as long as I could remember, she was using drugs and drinking and just a party girl. She was like beautiful and the life of the party. And one day when I was about 9 years old, and I guess she would have been 39, she announced to me and everybody that she was done doing drugs, like just cold turkey. I mean, who does that, right? Who goes from years and years, probably 15 plus years of drug use to cold turkey one day? And so she went from the drug use to becoming completely obsessed with the new age movement. This is back in the 80s when people were really into channeling and psychic abilities. It was a very popular thing going on, especially in Southern California. And she got really deep into it and she learned how to channel, which, if you don't know what channeling is, it's when a spirit kind of comes into your body and speaks through you. So she would do things like channel the collective consciousness of dolphins. Or I remember being on a hike with her once in the Santa Barbara Mountains, and she's like, there's a Native American spirit that wants to come through right now. And I'm 9 years old. I'm like terrified out of my mind. And she sits down and her whole body her facial features change, her voice changes, and she starts to channel this Native American spirit. So this kind of gives you an idea of my mom, right? She went from drug user, party girl to a channeler, like super whacked out new age person.
Jesus. Okay,
And
so when she was channeling, was it like would the voice talk through her or like what
yes, yes.
do you remember what
So
it
the
was
way,
saying
oh,
when
totally, totally. Yeah. So I'm 9 years old, and my mom pretty much locked herself in her bedroom for, in my little mind, it seems like she was in there for 3 weeks, maybe a month. I don't know how long she was in there, but she was in there trying to teach herself how to channel. And one day she said to me and my cousins lived with me. She said, come in here. I figured it out. And we go into her room and she's sitting on her bed and we're like so scared, but it's kind of cool because, like you like playing with a Ouija board. It was that type of feeling.
Mhm.
And she closed her eyes and you could see her eyes rolling in the back of her head through her eyelids and her like whole body slumped like this. And then all of a sudden she went, and she was a different person. I think the first entity that she channeled was like a alien that spoke a different language. So I don't know what they said, but they said something. And then she would channel, like I said, dolphins. She would channel these Native American spirits a lot. And yeah, they would just bring through, I don't know, wisdom, or you could ask questions. She really liked it when you asked questions because then they would respond and you could get into these conversations. But it was really fucking scary as a 9 year old, like so scary. But she got super into it to the point where she started teaching other people how to do it. And she started a psychic hotline. But it wasn't the kind of psychic hotline where you would call and ask, oh, what is my, who's my next love or anything. It was a psychic hotline that you could call and say, I'm having paranormal experiences and I need help. And she would teach them, like, oh, that's channeling or that's aliens talking to you. And she did this for a while until she met a woman who came to her. And this woman was like completely not into neo spiritual things like this. She was self identified as a Christian. She was married to a cop. She was very, as I would call, like a normie, but she was having a spirit come and talk to her. And the spirit was doing crazy things like levitating in the bed, making things move around the room, and asking her to basically let the spirit use her body to speak to people and bring their message to the planet. And so she ended up connected to my mom, and my mom taught her how to channel. And this woman went on to start a spiritual following, which still lives today. I can't say the name or anything because they'll probably sue me with slander. Um, but it still lives today. She has thousands of followers all over the world, and she channels this being. And a few months after my mom taught her that, we all moved to 180 acres in the Pacific Northwest. And that is where the cult was born.
Holy shit.
Listen, I'm almost 46 years old, and I'm still have to remind myself that that wasn't real. You know, there's still moments where I have to go, she probably had a mental health condition that wasn't real, that's not normal. She just packed us up. We were living in LA, in Los Angeles, and she just one day was like, we're going. And we put everything in the car. We didn't necessarily have an invitation to go there. She just was following this woman. And so we actually got here, rented a house. She enrolled me in a public school. And after a month or two, she got an invitation to go move to this ranch. And so the directions she got from the leader was, come to this, they were having like a retreat, come to this retreat with everything you need to live. And so my mom said, well, I need my daughter. And so we showed up at this retreat with probably 40 or 50 other people, and we never left. And it was, I mean, it was kind of idyllic at first. And it was beautiful out in the mountains. And the idea was this group of people, they were all going to live together and build little houses, and they liked to meditate and do yoga and eat healthy food. And it was really beautiful at first. I loved it at first because they had horses, and I was horse crazy. So I was like, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to live in this fairyland and hang out with the horses. And I think the first moment as I look back where I should have, but I could, my adult self can see that it was abusive, was it was cold, it was raining, and we were all sitting around waiting for this channeled entity to arrive. And I think I'm 9 or 11 years old, and I am so hungry. I am cold, I'm hungry. I've been ripped out of my home now twice, and nobody will feed me. And my mom doesn't have any ability to feed me. Like, she's going around trying to find, like, does anybody have any food? You know, my daughter's hungry. And I just remember being so cold and so hungry and not understanding why there's all these adults around me and nobody will feed me. And that kind of was my life for the next 10, 12 years, was just, there was no adult around taking care of me. And if I had a need, I had to figure out how to meet it. And oftentimes it just didn't get met. But again, there wasn't anywhere for me to go there wasn't anyone for me to go say, you know, I want a grilled cheese sandwich. Can you make me that? They would have breakfast and dinner in like a cafeteria style space. And they were often doing really weird diets. Like, I remember once they did a 40-day carrot juice fast, and everyone turned fucking orange. Like, for real. And so I'm over here kind of like, I'm not going to do a fast. Like, is there food? Like, where is the food for me? There were a couple other kids there. One of them was the child of the leader. And so pretty soon I got kind of brought into the big house where her kid was, and he had everything. You know, he had movies and toys and food and a fireplace. And at first it was like, oh, you can hang out with him. And then I had access to the kitchen. But pretty soon it became your job is to babysit him. And now I'm 11, 12. He's like 2, 3. And then it very quickly became your job is to keep the house clean and your job is to take care of all the animals. They actually sent me to maid training when I was 12 years old so that I could learn how to properly clean a house. And so now as I've gotten older and I've been healing, I was like, I was fucking trafficked. They labor trafficked me. And yeah, that's how my days went. They didn't let me go to school.
The whole like I decide when
Go
you
ahead.
eat thing stuff, and that sounds like almost like borderline slavery, right? Like you can't fucking leave. You don't have
Yes.
autonomy at like 11. You know, that's like terrifying. Oh my god. When you said
Yeah.
you were waiting for to channel the spirit, like what did waiting look like? Because I kind of imagine you guys were all like sitting around in a circle and everyone's like in a stance or something, but then your mom's like walking around grabbing food. So what did that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So when we first moved there, it was pretty raw land. There was a house and a old barn. And so that particular moment, we were all sitting in the barn waiting for the woman who channeled the spirit to come to the barn. And it kind of was like we called it darshan, which is actually a Hindi word, or for like a Hinduism word of just sitting and having court or being like among the spiritual teacher. And one of the things that she would do is she would make you wait a long time. You would never know. It'd be like, be in the barn at 10 a.m. And then at 3 p.m., she would finally show up. That was a very common thing. That's what I mean by waiting. As the years went on, they refurbished the barn and turned it into more like a temple or a church type area. So it was a bit more comfortable to sit in there and wait, but it would be the same thing, just hours and hours of kind of waiting for this spiritual experience to happen.
And then when this was going on, like as a child, did you feel any like spiritual connection, or were you drinking the Kool-Aid then?
Oh, 100%. I drank the Kool-Aid fully until I was 21. And then I started to go, oh, this isn't right. Something's weird here.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I feel. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say my belief system was that this was my God. And all of this work to meditate and to clear my mind and my body would eventually lead to my ascension. And I didn't think I would be here past 18 years old. Ascension meaning like going back to God.
Oh shit. Yeah, so how does that work too? So there is like a god figure and then you're just channeling like other spirits that are around. And
so in this situation for this spiritual commune, there's the woman who was like a real person like me, and she channeled an entity. We'll just call him M. And that entity is a dead person who reached enlightenment while living on the planet. So he's kind of like a god, but his teachings were that you're God, I'm God, we're all God. And it was about remembering who you truly are as God. And once you do, you will enlighten, ascend the body, and go back to the divine. Kind of like life here on earth is a bit of a jail, and you have to figure that out so you can suddenly pop off and remember that you're not really a human being, you're a god. So over the years, what they slowly did was convince me that my mom was not a good mom. And they actually had her sign over parenting rights. They meaning like the leader, her kind of like posse, her organization. So my mom wasn't really fulfilling any mothering roles. She was doing other things in the organization. She was traveling a lot.
Well, when they convinced your mom to sign over parental rights, was she okay with that? Like, did she agree with them?
That's a really good question. I think that it was devastating for her, but it was also like it was her God. So it was also like an honor. Who better could she give parental rights over to? And also at that point, I had been convinced that she was not a good mom, so I wanted her to give them over. And she also had such really low self-esteem, and they had really beaten her down mentally, that she believed she wasn't a good mom. It's pretty sad. I do want you to know, and listeners to know, that my mom's not alive anymore. She died about 5 years ago. We had a really good relationship for the rest of her life, and I got a lot of really good time with my mom.
I want to apologize for the interruption. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It really helps out the channel and you'll never miss an episode. Thanks.
And I was supposed to be mothered by the woman who ran the cult. So I kind of considered her my foster mom. But she wasn't mothering me. She was turned me into a slave. And so for years, from 12 until about 16 and a half, I just worked for her. I just took care of her kid and cleaned her house and took care of the animals. I would be moved around. Like, I didn't have a home. So for a couple of months, I lived in her spare bedroom. She made me live in the goat barn for a while. I got sent to another house on the property over and lived kind of in a dormitory style. So for all those years, I was just shuffled around. I always wanted my mom. I always asked my mom, can we please leave and go get a real home? I want a real home. I want to go to school. And that was always a no, for many different reasons. And when I got to be 15 years old, I actually got a boyfriend who didn't live at the cult. He wasn't in the cult. He was actually the son of someone who taught us like karate lessons or something. And that was my first love. I was like crazy in love and hadn't really been socialized. So I hadn't really had friends my age. So I super like bonded to him really fast. And once they saw that happen, they made me break up with him. They just told me like, you can't date. You have to break up with him. And it was devastating. And that moment kind of got me starting to be like, I'm being controlled. Like, I don't want to be controlled. And then they were using me in ceremonies as a virgin. There wasn't like sexual abuse going on. There was sexual control. So one of the reasons that I think they wanted me to break up with that boyfriend is I was probably close to losing my virginity. And then they wouldn't have a virgin anymore for their whatever the hell they were doing. Until one day, a man came to the ranch to give everybody tattoos. So everyone was required to get a tattoo. I was as well. And they're kind of like, this branding that happens a lot in cults. And he was older. I was like 16. He was probably 35 or 37. And he was extremely flirtatious with me. And I loved it because I didn't get attention from anyone. And they told me to have sex with him. And I did. And it was a devastating experience for me. And that was the moment that I was like, this is fucked. And I started speaking my mind. I just started telling this woman what I thought. I don't remember even a particular conversation. It was like my energy changed. And I think she could sense that she couldn't control me anymore. And so she kicked me out. And she said, you can go. She gave me like two options of destinations. And I chose to actually go to Hawaii. That was one of the destinations. I was like, yeah, I'll go to Hawaii.
I'm sorry.
And no, it's okay. Do you want me to stop? I know it can be really triggering.
I'm sorry. No, that just, oh my god, that made me so sad. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's good for me to hear that it's sad.
Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna go get.
Okay.
Shit, I've never had somebody make me cry before like that. Wow.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I know. I looked at your YouTube channel. I'm like, you've talked to some people. I get it. Yeah, it's super fucked up.
It's just like, I'm like crying for the little girl that you were. You know, it's like that's like. I guess I don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't remember where you were.
Oh, so they kicked me out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I just started to have a different energy. I wasn't a little girl anymore that could be controlled. And I think in some ways, there wasn't anything else that they could take away from me at that point. So I just started to stand up a little bit more and talk back and question what was going on. And just all of a sudden one day, I don't even remember what the circumstance was that spurred this, but she was like, you have to leave and you can go to Hawaii or you can stay like in the town that we lived in. And she said, I will pay for your apartment for 6 months and I'll give you kind of like a stipend. And then you're on your own, which in retrospect is super fucked up. Like I had no education. They didn't let me go to school. I had no reality of what happened outside this 180 acres. And they didn't let me tell my mom. You know, so I'm still a minor. I'm only 16 and a half. So I got on a plane and I flew to Hawaii. And at first it was awesome. Like I'm a 16-year-old girl. I'm living on my own. I have an apartment. I've got money. And I found a job. And my first job was in a t-shirt shop. You know, when you go to like those touristy type places and there's the t-shirt shop that you get the t-shirt printed. So I worked in a spot like that, and man, that place was super fucked up. So that when someone walked in, you would kind of find out who they are and where they're from and how much you could charge them. And people from Japan, you could charge the most. So people from Japan would pay like $200 for a sweatshirt, where an American, you would charge them like $30. So the whole system was run on commissions, and it was the salesperson at the end of the day who could make the most money off of these tourists. And so at that job, that's the first time I ever learned that like people lied. So I had grown up in this environment thinking, I guess one of our values at the cult was extreme honesty. And I would get in really big trouble if I ever lied, like little white lies. Like lying was the worst thing you could ever do. So I kind of thought that was how the world was. And this was this crash course in not only people lie, but people really do messed up things to each other. And I did really good at that job, but I was like, my soul couldn't handle it. So I quit working there and I ended up getting another job in retail. And I fell into a crowd of people that I would later discover were drug dealers, and I didn't know it. And it started with a man, you know, a boy. I was like 17 and he was probably 22. And we started dating, and he very quickly moved in with me, and I very quickly was paying for everything. And then we had this horrible breakup that broke my heart, and I had no idea what was going on. I just thought I was in this great relationship. And after we broke up, all these weird things started happening where like I would leave my house and these girls would try to jump me. And it got to the point where I couldn't leave my house without being beat up. And so this is when I finally reconnected with my mom. I called my mom. She had kind of gotten out of the cult, not completely, but she was living on her own. And I was like, buy me a plane ticket. Like, I need a plane ticket and I need a taxi because I can't leave my house. These people are trying to beat me up. And so she did. And I came back and went back to the cult.